Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to our virtual professional development session today called Applying to Graduate School in the Humanities and Social Sciences. This is the next in the Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development Series that are happening every Wednesday this summer. I am joined by my colleagues, Joseph Brown from Stanford University, Patricia Ray from the University of Pennsylvania, and Sandra Barnes from Brown University. And I would like you all to, I would like our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do today. We'll start with Dr. Brown.
Hi, everyone. Joseph Brown, he, his pronouns. I work at Stanford and got my PhD in psychology at Stanford, but I also have a background in both physics and bioengineering. And I'm also a first-generation college student from San Antonio, Texas. So looking forward to talking with you today.
And I guess I'll go next. I'm Patricia Ray from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm the Director of Admissions here in the School of Arts and Sciences. I've been here for about 34 years, so I have a lot of expertise in the application process. I've seen a lot of changes and a lot more to come.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Barnes, the CV Star Chair and Department Chair in Sociology at Brown University. My background is in inequality and religion, as well as quite a bit of work around EDI. So I'm excited to be here and welcome.
All right, so I am going to get things started off by providing a process overview. And I guess the first thing to suggest is that when you're thinking about applying to graduate school and you're thinking about a master's or a PhD, it's helpful to do an assessment of the strengths, the things that you would bring to the application process in terms of the coursework, skills you've developed doing research, internships, jobs, things you can bring to bear to argue that you're prepared to thrive in a graduate program. I also want to recommend individual development programs, and there's a great one. Take down this website, www.imaginephd.com. There's an individual development plan at that website that lets you assess your strengths, but also think about some things that you might need to work on along the way to preparing to apply to graduate school. So I strongly recommend the IDP at that website. You also want to think about whether you're going to apply to a master's or a PhD. And there's a lot to say about, those two degree paths, but here's my short version. A master's degree is really about taking a year or two more schooling, more coursework, including perhaps a master's thesis where you'll be doing research under the supervision of a faculty member. But essentially, it's 1 to 2 years of additional training and knowledge that you're going to then take out into the world. And one way to understand a PhD is, if you all are fans of Star Wars, a PhD is about wanting to be a Jedi Master. So Jedi Masters are trained, they apprentice themselves to a Jedi Master who has the responsibility to train them to be a Jedi Master. And that's what a PhD process is about. When you join a PhD program, you are apprenticing yourself to a faculty member or two, and those faculty have the responsibility to train you to be one of few people in the world trained to produce new knowledge in that discipline. And the way it makes a difference is that there are lots of factors and things that graduate admissions committees are looking to assess your preparation. It isn't just your grades and test scores. Yes, those can be important, but it's also your research experiences and coursework, the skills that you've developed, your ability to be creative, your ability to learn from difficulties and frustrations that are part of any sophisticated graduate program. And that's why essays and letters of recommendation from faculty that know you are so important. Also important will be, for some programs, a writing sample that you submit so that the admissions committee can assess your skills at writing, because it's so important, especially in humanities programs, that you turn around your research and submit it for publication. So all of those make up the components of the graduate application. So part of what you're going to be doing is reviewing programs at various schools, and you're going to look at the admissions requirements and faculty in the program and their research areas. And there's some good news there, because more and more information about the faculty and their research, you'll find those online. Faculty are more and more, they have their CVs, their academic resumes online. Often their labs will have websites. You can assess the current research projects that are going on. And also important, you can see a listing of the students, the graduate students, undergrads, and postdocs that are attached to that lab who are working with that faculty member. Because one of the things you want to do, in addition to reaching out to faculty, is that you want to ask for informational interviews with current students so that you can get a sense of their experience of the program. So you can ask them the kinds of questions that let you visualize what it would be like for you to be in that graduate program. So you're going to also want to have a plan to organize and to keep track of where you are with the different programs that you're applying to. Who have you reached out to? What components of the application have you already collected? So having a spreadsheet, Excel or a Google Sheet can be really helpful. And one distinction between applying to master's programs and PhD programs that is really important to keep in mind is that for most PhD programs, the humanities and social sciences, they're going to be funded. They're going to pay you for your PhD. You're generally not going to have to pay for your PhD, but for master's programs, typically you're going to have loans and grants that will support you for the master's degree. So keeping that in mind is really important for deciding whether you want to apply to a master's or a PhD. We can have the next slide. So one of the key things you want to do as you think about this process is to write down what your reasons are for going to graduate school. What do you want to accomplish? Why do you want the graduate degree? Is there a career that you're thinking about? Is there some endeavor that matters to you for which you think a graduate degree is really important? Write your reasons down and start to write down your interests. Your interests may be quite general, right? There may be areas of a discipline that interest you, but you haven't really narrowed down to a specific topic. That's fine. Or your interests may be very specific. Whatever they are, write them down. You also want to think about what your academic and professional goals are. Is it that you're going to get your PhD and you'll pursue a career in teaching and writing, so you're going to pursue a career in academia? Or maybe you're going to take that PhD or master's degree and join, join industry, but do research. Are you most interested in teaching? Is your ideal career in industry, government, or the public sector? And one big and important question to ask is, don't just assume that you need a PhD. Talk to folks and determine whether expertise in your discipline is going to require a PhD, or is it more important you gather some experience in the field before you then apply to graduate school? And if you're switching disciplines, if you're switching areas for graduate school from the area that you were engaged in your undergraduate studies, does it make sense to get a master's degree first before you anticipate a PhD? Generally, for applying to the social sciences and the humanities, you don't require a master's degree to apply to the PhD program. You can apply directly as an undergrad. But if you're switching areas, maybe it does make sense to get a master's degree. So these are some things to write down and to think about as you decide whether to apply to graduate school or not. And let me also finish by encouraging you to talk to the people around you, the faculty, the students, and postdocs, and let them know what you're thinking. Let them know what your questions are and get some of their perspectives and experience. They can be invaluable to you as you're deciding what your next steps are. And we can move to the next slide.
Okay, I'm going to take over for right now and talk about what you should consider when you're applying to graduate school. And one thing that sticks up is the school or the program that you're interested in and their reputation in the field. So obviously all of us here are coming from high level institutions, Ivy League schools that are close to Ivy Leagues, as in the case of Stanford. But we're all high level institutions that are very competitive between each other. They offer probably the best funding. So these are all things that you want to take into consideration when you're looking around. One thing I want to start with is that's what you're going to find with our presentation, that a lot of this is going to take some research. You're going to need to spend some time on trying to find out all the missing pieces to a good application. And that's what we're here to help you with, help you think about what's going to help you get into our programs. Your research interests, as Dr. Brown just said, how do they compare with the institution that you're interested in? Start looking at the websites. Like Dr. Brown said, look at the students that are in the program currently. That's where you're going to get a wealth of information. Like what kind of environment there is within the school. Okay, where is the school located? If you're coming from the West Coast, and be aware that you're going to have some snow in the wintertime if you come back east. Okay, those are things that some people don't like that kind of weather, and can't even imagine in coming back here. So it's not that bad, believe me. Penn, if you're considering Penn is in a good location. We don't usually get slammed. That's more north. So we're in a good spot where you get a little bit and it says, oh, isn't that nice? And then a couple of days later, it's all melted. So don't worry about it at Penn. But your other northern schools, they can get really hit hard with snow. Makes for nice, you can stay home a couple of days, but it's difficult getting around. And if you don't like the cold, that's something to take into consideration, I mean. And then the stipends, like I said, at least in the Ivies and in the schools that we are representing here today, the stipend levels are pretty high. And that's great when you're applying. But one thing to also keep into consideration is when the stipends are high, that means it's a little more competitive than the average institutions. And they're making a big investment in you, so that you want to make sure that you've covered all your bases and completed a full review of what you want to submit as an application, because they're going to be looking at you as your research interests and what they are and how you match up with our institutions, but also, are you going to be able to make it through the program? Do you have the passion that's going to be needed in order to keep going? Check out the fellowship opportunities. Like we said, the stipend is one thing, but also never stop looking around for outside opportunities from fellowships, because they can only enhance whatever stipend level that you come in with. Find out what the program requirements are. That you can find out from their website. And as Dr. Brown said, I mean, websites have really changed over the years, and they provide much more information for you to get all these questions answered just by going out. Okay, I'm interested in Penn, and I'm interested in, say, the philosophy department. Go there and start just reading through all of their information that's out online. It gives you links to the faculty. It gives you links to the students, what the faculty are working on, what their projects are, a way to contact them. There's a coordinator there. Never forget about the coordinator, because she's the one that can intercede for you on a department level and get the faculty to respond and talk to you directly. You can also find out from the students about networking and socialization opportunities. You know, how friendly is everybody within the school? Penn is interdisciplinary. We have one of our campus is all located on one area. So it makes for interdisciplinary opportunities are easy to accommodate here. And what kind of school resources do they have? You know, again, these institutions that we're representing here are top of the line, and they have the resources that can blow your mind, really. It's really amazing, and an opportunity to consider applying to our programs is really, really something to be proud of, really. We look forward to your applications. Okay, next slide. So in general, I want to just talk in this slide about the application itself. As it says, most applications are completed online. I know we don't take paper application anymore, so I would say probably 90% of the institutions don't take them on in paper format anymore. And like Dr. Brown said, that's always my tip. Whenever you're starting the application process, of which you know, I'm really involved in, you need a spreadsheet. You need to start writing down these institutions, where you're interested in, what are their deadlines. Just at Penn alone, not this year, but last year, we have at least 5 or 6 different deadlines for programs across the institution. It's hard for me to keep track of them. Because everyone wants to stay open a little longer than their competitors. So that's the first thing you need to take care of. Do they offer a fee waiver? We do, but it's not just a given. When you start at the application process, you have to write and ask for it, and you get a code that gets you into the system without having to pay. So you don't have to pay for the fee. Anybody that's a participant of the Leadership Alliance, University of Pennsylvania will provide you with a fee waiver. You just have to ask. And most of us probably will do the same. The test scores. So the test scores, again, at Penn, that's what I mean. A lot of things have changed over the last 34 years that I've been here. That used to be a piece, and Dr. Brown, he specializes in the GRE scores. They used to be, I mean, you couldn't apply without them. And now it varies across the programs. I administer 32 programs here, and it runs the gamut from we don't want to look at them, we don't want them, we can't operate without them, we don't care if you send them, but if you send them, we'll look at them. It's just really wishy-washy anymore. And I look for the day when they just say we don't want them, because sometimes people just don't test well, and it's not a fair representation all the time of what you can do. So try not to worry about them. If your program asks for them, just submit them, because there's other parts of your application that you can enhance and talk about that will not gloss over, but will make the test scores not as important as they are. Okay. And in that case, it's your transcripts. Your transcripts they're going to look at for what kind of work you've done over the last couple of years. What your recommendations, your letters of recommendation, are they coming from top people in your institution? I always say, be aware that academia is a small field and everybody knows everybody. So always be on your best behavior and always be nice to everyone, because you never know when you're going to need them in the end. So, because they all know oh yeah, that's my friend. And that does put a little bit of weight on it, when they start reading these recommendations. Oh, well, it's my friend. He wouldn't recommend somebody that couldn't make it. So always be conscious of that. Then you have your essay and your statements of purpose, and talk about why you want to do this work. What are you applying for? What kind of passion do you have? What brings you to this field? What are your life experiences, and why does that help you determine that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life? Writing samples, as Dr. Brown said, when it's humanities and social science programs, those are really important. You want to pick something that's going to represent your writing skills the best way possible. Be conscious, again, it can vary by institution how long of a writing sample they want, 10 to 15 pages, no more than 25, whatever that is. Keep this information all on your spreadsheet. What other requirements are specific to their program? Do you need to, in case of international students, or if your native language is not English, how about a TOEFL score or an IELTS score? Are any of those required? Do they require a CV? Not every program at Penn requires a CV. It's there, you can submit one if you have it, but it's not required as a piece that will hold up your application. So that's a lot, but those are some of the things to keep in mind as you begin this process. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Barnes.
For the next few minutes, I'd like to provide a summary about graduate essays. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because we're actually going to provide you with detail in subsequent slides. So first, I'm not going to basically regurgitate something that's already been stated. So in terms of your statement of purpose, basically the goal here is to describe why you want to attend graduate school. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The personal statement, this is where you talk about yourself in terms, and also why you're a good fit for the program. I would say for all of these statements, you want to make sure that you make some kind of linkage to the program. That's just going to remind the reader why you are applying to this experience. The next statement, the research statement, describes your research interests or research that you have performed. You also want to make a linkage to the program as well as to future research interests. Even if your future research might be a little different from what you've done in the past, it's important to provide that information as well as make some connections across those experiences. The next statement in terms of essay is the diversity statement. I'm going to be talking in much more detail about this statement that is focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and how you see yourself making contributions around those three facets. The next piece is the application essays. And of course, whether programs require this type of essay is going to vary. Some programs do not require application essays because they've gotten the prior statements that I've mentioned, while others may ask you a particular question and ask you to basically write around that particular subject. There, they really want to see whether you can write on a topic in a thoughtful, coherent way, as well as whether these essays should not really duplicate information from the prior statements. And lastly, your writing samples. Persons have already discussed the importance of the writing samples. I'll just make a few more statements. You want to make sure this is your best work. You want to make sure that you link it to the program if at all possible. If it's not linked to the program, that is not something that is a deal breaker. Because you may be transitioning from one topic to another that's more germane to your interest right now. You also want to make sure you follow the instructions. If they ask for one writing sample, don't send 3. Just really focus on what they're asking you, because that's going to show that you have, what do they say? You understand the assignment. Very, very important. Even though all of this process is now online, I would encourage everyone, for all of these essays, all of these statements, make sure you print out a hard copy and edit from the hard copy. Invariably, your writing is going to be stronger. It's going to be better if you're making changes via a hard copy. If you're just trying to edit using your laptop or an iPad, many times you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to miss certain errors. So I would encourage everyone, print out hard copies, edit from hard copies, and then make those changes, knowing that you're going to be submitting your essays online. Lastly, I can't emphasize enough, if you're able to do so, link each of these essays directly or indirectly to the program for which you are applying. So I'll stop there, and because we're going to talk about all of these pieces of information in more detail.
Are you going to talk about statement of purpose?
Excuse me?
Oh, I was asking Patricia if she's going to talk about statement of purpose.
I'm sorry. As usual, I start talking and I'm still muted. Ugh. Okay, so the statement of purpose. Now I'm all flustered because I was talking and nobody was listening. Oh my. See, it's always fun. Typically, the statement of purpose is between 750 and 1,000 words. And it explains why you would like to attend graduate school, and in particular, their institution or our institution. We want you to basically think about, what do you intend to do in graduate school? It's all going to tie into as the personal statement, just like Dr. Barnes just said. I mean, it's going to be about your life experiences, is how you have gotten to this point, what has happened in your life that has brought you to the statement of purpose, where you can talk about, I'm really passionate about working on this type of research or writing about this because of what's happened in my life. I really think that this will have an impact on me going forward, and I can really do some good with my expertise. You're going to come in working with someone in the faculty that's going to enhance your knowledge of this. You're going to carry on their work, basically. So you want to look and see who you're going to work with and explain why you think this is a good fit for you and why your research is going to fit in with the faculty that are already there. And it's just going to enhance the research that's already being done. So you have to take a little time and think about it. Think about how much your enrollment would have an impact on this, because you're really trying to talk yourself up so that someone wants to work with you. Someone says, wow, this statement is really describing this student really well, and I think this is someone that I would like to work with. And that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to do the hook. You're trying to get him or her to say, this is a student that I think would work well with me. We have similar interests, and we would work well together. That's really what you're going for. I think that's all I can say. Is this me as well?
The next slide is mine, but my connection is unable. Ask my friend, Dr. Brown, if he would take the next slide on personal statements.
Yeah, got it. I guess I got the next two. Well, actually, this slide, never mind. I'll go. So one thing I just want to make clear is that for many of you, probably the nearest experience to the graduate admissions essay that you've had would be the essays that you wrote for admission to college. And the message I want you to know is This is not like that at all. Okay. And the reason it's not like that is that, for applying to college, you were trying to convey an overall sense of who you were. And here, what you're doing is sharing a narrower, more professional slice of who you are as it relates to your potential as a scholar in that discipline. So it's going to, by definition, be relatively less personal. Among the things that you do want to share are specific, unique details to provide them with some information about your academic journey, what has led you to the specific research interests. But by the way, they can be general or specific, but to the field-specific interests that you want to pursue in a graduate study. And let me just put a boundary around that. Folks are generally not interested in what you did before college. So if you're applying to physics and you want to share that you've been in love with the stars since you were a kid, that's great. But that doesn't really make you different from all the other folks who are applying to physics programs. So you don't want to share that. Unless, as in high school, you were engaged in a research project where maybe you had access to a big telescope and you had a research experience that is unique, then you might want to share that. But generally, the experiences you want to share are experiences from college, also internships, research experiences, or class experiences that have led you to want to pursue a graduate study. And so it's those kinds of stories that you want to share. People are often think that they have to make this type of essay one in which you share things in chronological order. You don't have to do that. What you could do instead, and keep in mind, the space you'll have to share this is relatively limited. What you might want to do is focus on the most important experience that you've had that has led you to want to pursue graduate study. Share that first, and how that has shaped your interest. Then you might want to write about other experiences. So think in terms of research experiences, internships, in classroom experiences, or other types of experiences and activities that have led you to think, hey, I want to pursue graduate study in this particular area. What I also want to encourage you to do is to write more than you ordinarily would. Get as much on the page as you can. The more that you get on the page, the easier it will be for you to start to edit that material for concision and to really focus on creating a narrative that winds through the experiences that you're sharing. Next slide. And I think that this is me for zeroing in on research interests. And these are the kinds of questions that you'll be answering. What have you done? You'll try to connect those experiences to the program and the research interests that you want to pursue. When that question, what have you done? Don't think in terms of going into the kind of detail that would go into an empirical paper. That's too much detail. You want to think in terms of sharing the question or questions that you were investigating and what you found out. And how did that lead to what your next step was or your next research interest? How did that experience shape the interest that you want to pursue in graduate study? And how do you do this? I think similar to what I suggested in the previous slide, you want to first write a memory dump. Write about all of your research experiences in a lot of detail. But then what you're going to do is you're going to want to zero in on 2 or 3 of the research experiences that have been most important in shaping who you are as a scholar and the next steps that you want to pursue. And then think about the order in which you want to share those experiences, and again, start editing those experiences for concision. Next slide.
going to talk a bit more about the diversity statement. These statements are critical in terms of just providing the reader with a glimpse of who you are and your thoughts around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so for this particular statement, they will provide you with some type of page constraints. As I said, be sure to follow the instructions. This particular statement is exciting because it enables you to share demographics, personal pieces of information that you think will inform the overall application, that you think will enhance your dossier. So let's say you're a first generation college student. Let's say your parents were immigrants. Let's say you're a multi-ethnic student. Anything you want to share that you think will help them understand who you are and how it's connected to the capacities and what you can bring to that particular graduate program, you should feel comfortable including that information in your diversity statement. I will also encourage everyone to be as specific as possible. I read hundreds of these statements, and many times some of them are so vague. Everyone wants to enhance enhance equity and diversity and inclusion in the world. That's too broad. You want to be very specific about your past experiences and what you bring to the table around EDI. For example, were you a teaching assistant in an EDI related class? Did you create a workshop around equity, diversity, and/or inclusion? Did you participate in workshops around this subject? Did you earn a certificate, let's say in gender studies or in women's studies or in race studies? Those are specific types of experiences that you want to include in your diversity statement. And then to make the next connection between those experiences and how those experiences will inform research, your courses, and service in a graduate program. Also, I'd encourage persons that this statement, you want to be as transparent as you're comfortable being. This is not a time to be self-effacing. And I say that because what I found is many times minority students, younger students coming right out of undergrad, women, our female students, they often feel uncomfortable providing and documenting their capacities and their accomplishments around EDI. So I'd encourage everyone to be comfortable writing about those accomplishments around equity, diversity, and inclusion. As I mentioned before, very important to edit this work by hand so that you can make sure you're putting your best foot forward. So again, you really want to make sure that this particular statement shows who you are and connects to the program that you're applying for. I've already summarized this information, so we will just continue. I'm going to talk about the writing sample, and thus far, persons have alluded to the importance of the writing sample. I want to just make a few more comments. Again, making sure this statement or the sample is germane to the program. If you've actually engaged in research and you have a link to or a PDF of an article or a research note that you have completed, even if it's co-authored, that would be a potential example of a writing sample to consider. You want to make sure that it's your best work. I'd encourage you to ask a mentor, ask a professor that you trust. If you have 3 or 4 different writing samples, which one do they think best represents you as a potential graduate student, as a burgeoning scholar activist? So again, make sure it's your best work and that it's connected to the program. Also, when you have a writing sample, unless it's a peer-reviewed piece or a book chapter that's already been published, it may be wise to let someone read it, let someone else edit it as well. So you're looking at it, but then sometimes you may be too close to the product. So maybe you have a faculty member that you trust. You have a senior student that you trust who can look at the writing sample and edit it for you as well. That's just going to be a smart way to make sure that it represents you best. Also, something that I've noticed that is a relatively new phenomenon, let's say, I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, are, yes, applicants who are submitting what I'm calling traditional writing samples, but I've also seen kind of an uptick in persons who are submitting, let's say, white papers. They're submitting a policy paper that they worked with a faculty member on, or they're submitting a series of op-ed pieces that they have written, meaning many times students are engaged in community-facing and forward-facing writing. Those can make some really exciting application submissions. So you do have a little latitude there, but whatever you send in, if it's traditional in terms of a piece that's been published, that's great. That kind of follows the status quo, but it's really important to remember that there are some other writing samples that are considered appropriate if they represent your best work, they represent who you are as an up-and-coming scholar, and you've made sure that you edit them appropriately.
So thank you very much for providing their insights. If you have any questions, and we really hope you do, please enter them in the question and answer box. Next week, there is going to be a follow-up to this workshop called Constructing Your Statement of Purpose. And you can sign up for that at the Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development site. So at this point, again, thank you to all of our panelists. I'd like to open the floor to any questions that you might have. And I want to call on Jane Endorf to help me with this, because there are some questions that were previously submitted. And I am having a very unstable internet connection in my new place. So if you could help me with that, Jane, I would greatly appreciate it.
Of course. Hi, everybody. I know you all know me. I'm Dr. Jane Endorf, Manager of Undergraduate and Graduate Programs with Leadership Alliance. Okay, let me get myself organized here, because as usual, I have many windows open, but questions that have come in. So one of the questions that was already addressed is, do I need to get a PhD, or should I just get a master's? And maybe the panelists could go into a little more detail about what might be a deciding factor there.
I'll share just in terms of my insights. When I was contemplating whether to, because I had already gotten a couple of master's degrees and I was contemplating the next step, my decision was based on where I wanted to go. Meaning I knew that I wanted a tenure track job, or even if I wanted to work in a non-academic space, I didn't want to hit a glass ceiling and someone say, well, we would have hired her, but we prefer a PhD. If I hit a glass ceiling, I wanted it to be about something that I could address in a slightly different way. And so I'll leave that. But for me, I knew that I didn't want to hit a glass ceiling. I knew that I wanted to have as much expertise around the subject that I was interested in, because I was interested in inequality and in poverty. And there were so many kind of anecdotes and stereotypes about working class and poor people. I really wanted to make sure that if I was going to be involved, I would be as prepared as possible. So those are some of the things that I'd encourage you to think about. Do you want to really kind of be a thought partner? Do you want to be engaged in the creation of knowledge and do some things a little bit differently than, let's say, some folks have done in the past? For me, I'd encourage everyone, if you think about it, a master's degree is a couple of years, add 2 more years, 2.5 more years, you have a PhD. And so if that's the way that I looked at it, and I would encourage everyone, I'm a little prejudiced, I'll say, about it, but I'd encourage you, if you're going to get a master's, you're young, 3 more years, get the PhD.
Okay, I'm going to take a different approach, but not an inconsistent one, I don't think. So I think a PhD is a really deep dive, and it's not for everybody. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It is intense, and you want to talk to lots of people and get lots of perspectives and think about it to determine, is it something that would be worth it for you to do, such that you can enjoy it and have a great stimulating experience and build some skills that you'll value for those, total 4, 5, 6 years. And I think when you talk to lots of people and you're really engaged in this, your gut's going to start to talk to you in terms of whether it's the approach that you should take or not. So that's what I would suggest. I think I made a similar decision to Sandra. I decided I wanted to study how stereotypes affected minorities and women in academic settings. And I knew that if I wanted to then use that knowledge to make a difference in people's lives, a PhD was just necessary. It was just necessary. But on top of that, I loved social psychology, and I knew I was going to enjoy learning how to run social psychology experience. I was going to enjoy reviewing research in social psychology and applying it to the topics that interested me. And so those were other important decisions that let me know that I would enjoy being in a psychology PhD program, and I value the skills and the knowledge that I gained. And so people will come to that judgment themselves, but engaging with the people around them to ask questions and to continue thinking until that gut starts to speak to them.
And that's really what I wanted to back.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that that's exactly what Dr. Brown just said. You're going to go with your gut. You need to start thinking about, hey, that sounds really interesting. That sounds like something I want to do. The possibilities of this career are endless. And you start building that interest and the feeling that you have, that you're starting to build that passion that says, I can do this. This is for me. And this is where I want to make a difference. And that's where you'll feel that this is the right path. This is what I want to do.
Just to add,
So
I was going to say in the divinity school, we always say, follow the path that brings you joy. And so that's really what we're talking about is what is going to really bring you joy, not just now, but moving forward, because we've used words like rigor. We've used words like it's a challenge. But if you're getting joy out of it, then it's not really, it's not a bad thing. You really are excited and you have the energy that you need to complete the task or the race. So I would say whatever, they use that cliche, if you won $1 million, what would you do tomorrow? Sounds like a cliche, but really that's what they're asking for. What gives you enough joy that you would come back the next day if you didn't need the money? And so to me, that's a litmus test that has always worked for me and that I would encourage each person to consider.
Second question, I'll come back to the question from. So the question is, how many quality long-term research projects would show the admissions committee that I'm a good pick for their PhD program? But what I wanted to ask is, along with that, would you all mind talking about the importance of summer research programs if you're able to get into one? We know that the Leadership Alliance, for example, is one of the major venues for folks who want to be in the humanities and the social sciences. There are very few summer opportunities. So how do you take advantage of that? And to follow with this question, how many quality long-term projects would show the admissions committee? And I would probably say it's not so much the quantity, but definitely the quality of the program. So I'm going to turn it over to the panel. Thank you.
Well, I just want to reiterate that, but I think other folks are going to have a lot of things to say. I don't think it's the number, it's the quality and the depth. So I'm going to let other people talk how important summer research programs are, because I'm going to emphasize that for many of our top programs, it's really important to have one long-term research experience where you've got a faculty member that has known you and mentored you over the course of a year or 2 or 3 on one big project or on multiple projects. I think that's really, really important, because I think that's the depth. And I think what summer research programs can offer is breadth, but also give you an opportunity to really get to know faculty and students at a graduate program that you're considering. So I think that's great. But I just want to note, one long-term research experience is really important in psychology, things are getting kind of crazy such that they're not simply wanting you to have a couple of years of undergraduate research experience. They're more and more loving it if you've got a year or two of full-time post-bac research experience. And I have a lot of problems with that's one reality facing folks applying to psychology programs in particular right now. So I think depth is really important, but so is breadth. And I'll let my other colleagues chime in.
I was just going to say, just enhancing what Dr. Brown says. I mean, it does provide you with a long-term project and breadth on that, depth on it. But at the end of the summer project, you have someone that can speak about your research that you've done, what type of work you've done, what kind of student have you done? Have you been engaging? Have you been inquisitive? Do you want to see this project through? Again, it's all about building this passion of, this is great and I can't wait to get back to my home institution so I can finish it or move forward with it, So it's all about that. This summer program, man, I mean, it's changed my life. So I know that you guys will all get good experiences out of this summer project. You have just had such an opportunity, and I just look in my office at all the cohorts that have come through my office and my little program, and all the people that have not necessarily right away gone right into a PhD program, but thought about it a year later, did some master's work, thought about it, maybe did a job, but more than not, they've all gone in and had their PhDs. I'm just so proud, and it's just been such a blessing, and I hope you will enjoy every moment of the summertime experience.
I wanted to add another piece to that, because in some instances, and probably we know the Leadership Alliance, all these research summer programs only have a certain number of slots. And unfortunately, some students are going to be unable to participate. I don't want anyone here to think that should preclude your applying to a PhD program. The key piece there is you want to be able to justify why you haven't done that. And many times it's just that you submitted your applications and you were not selected. I'd encourage persons to think about what are ways in which I can still get some kind of proxy experience. Maybe there are local professors that you could reach out to, and you could volunteer to do some data coding, volunteer to learn about analytical approaches so that you can include that on your dossier. So don't think that because you haven't participated in a program that would eliminate your competitiveness. That will not. Think about something I did mention during my presentation is term papers from classes. Many times if you haven't engaged in traditional research, but you've written a really thoughtful term paper, then and you have someone to edit it for you, that would be a great writing sample. So there are just some opportunities there where you can still make yourself competitive.
Let's say, for example, Triple Lines, and you weren't made an offer. That doesn't say anything about the quality of your application. Sometimes it's as simple as the faculty members who have that expertise were not available, so we couldn't make you an offer. That is really important to remember. Just because you didn't get an offer it says nothing about your application. And unfortunately, the schools in Brown and Stanford and Penn and me, this is my last day at Vanderbilt, but we get so many applications, we can't possibly match everyone. That's number one. But we want you to know that. And so please take the advice of the panelists into explaining, yes, you did apply, but you weren't made an offer. But these are some other things that you've done to make or keep yourself competitive. And the next question from Naomi Alvarado is, how can we best connect our writing sample to the program, meaning the PhD program that they're applying to? And I'll turn this over to the panel.
A couple of suggestions. I would look at the dossiers or the profiles of the faculty members on their website and take a look at, let's say you've done work in inequality, racial inequality. Look at the faculty who are doing that kind of work, and then make a connection. You may not, some programs actually ask you who are 2 to 3 faculty members that you'd like to work with. Well, then that would provide a very strong connection. But even if they don't, you can make the connection that, well, Dr. Jones and Dr. Smith are doing racial and ethnic work, and this is the connection. This is a programmatic connection to my work. And that just strengthens your case. It also shows that you've investigated the website for the institution, to let the readers know that you're serious about coming to that place.
I also wanted to highlight something that Professor Barnes said earlier about if you can find a faculty member who's willing to look over and provide comments, take an angry red pen to your best work, so that you can then take it and improve it, so you can go through that cycle 2 or 3 times. So you take your best work and with the help of a faculty member, make it even better. That's the approach to take. By the way, lots of our institutions have writing centers, and those writing centers may have consultants who are in the discipline that you're thinking about applying to, or a similar one. And if you can work with someone like that, that can be helpful too. But I really liked what Professor Barnes said earlier, taking your best work and having somebody who will work with you to make it even stronger. That's really important.
And I want to add something else, and it does relate to what Dr. Barnes said, because I'm familiar with her work, and it's very interdisciplinary. So when you're searching for these graduate programs and the faculty members, please don't necessarily search for the name of a program. Look for that research. And I'm referring to Dr. Barnes because I know her research intersects sociology and religion and a few other things. And so we want you to find the right mentor, right faculty member in the right programs, and we don't want you to unnecessarily restrict yourself. So please make sure you do your searches wisely, as Ms. Ray said, that you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the best chance to get into programs. And that's one more thing. Please don't go applying to 15 programs. You should probably have some group around 3, 4, 5, 6, so that you can really focus your efforts and do the best job that you can in your application. And I'm going to ask for any closing comments from our panelists.
Don, I just want to highlight and affirm what you said. Here's something I just want to suggest to students. Grad programs aren't stupid. And I've had lots and lots of students talk to me and say, they chose a safety school to apply to where they were sure they could get admitted. And you know what? Many of them reported not getting admitted to their safety school. And the reason is that the safety school, these folks aren't stupid. And what they didn't admit them because they thought, if we admit this person, they're not going to go here. They're going to go to Vanderbilt. They're going to go to Johns Hopkins. So, only apply to schools that if they admit you, you will seriously consider going. You would want to go. Because if you don't, you're wasting your time, and applying to a fewer programs where you can devote more time to preparing a strong application that is tuned to each school is better than applying to lots of programs that you haven't thoroughly researched. So.
One more comment around that subject. Unfortunately, I have seen instances where clearly a student was applying to 15 universities because they forgot to change Harvard from a statement that they were sending to us. And so because they didn't focus. So again, be real comfortable knowing these are the 5 or 6 schools that I really am interested in. I'd be happy to go to any of them. And then you can hone your efforts to do the best job. My closing statement is to be excited about this process, because you're trying to find a fit, whether it's a master's program or a PhD. It is something that is going to be a period of just exploration, enjoyment, and look at it that way, so that you'd be excited while you're going through this application process.
I just want to say, as an admissions person, to not wait until the last minute to submit your materials. And you see everybody shaking their heads because there's nothing worse than the last minute stuff and missing the deadline. So this is where your spreadsheet comes in, where you write down all the deadlines for your specific program so that you're not late. I always recommend Thanksgiving weekend is a time when you have 4 days off. You can stay home, get all this stuff gathered together and get it ready to submit. Some people, their deadline is the 1st of December. So you're right up at it, okay? But don't wait, please don't wait until the day. Our deadline last year was December 15th, and so many stories. I've been pushing the button, and yeah, well, you and everybody else is pushing the same button, and you can't get through. It's jammed. Please, if you don't take nothing else out of this meeting, don't wait till the last minute. And good luck.
Give the final word to Dr. Jane Endorf from Brown University.
Thank you, Dr. Brunson. So I just want to conclude by saying, please join us next week for our session on writing your personal statement, but we're also going to talk about writing or how to put together your CV and resume. And so next week's session is really going to complement all of the information that we got here today. So thank you very much to our panelists. It was wonderful to hear from you and hear your insider perspective. And I will say goodbye until next time. Thank you.